On November 16, 2025, 4 Chinese Coast Guard ships, some armed with deck-mounted machine guns, entered Japan's Senkaku Islands patrol line just after Japan's new prime minister publicly warned that Japan might use military force if China moved on Taiwan. Within hours, radios blared, protests flew, and the rules for responding to Chinese incursions quietly changed. But what triggered this sudden escalation, and what did both sides risk? At precisely 10:15 a.m. on November 16, 2025, 4 Chinese Coast Guard vessels crossed into the 12 nautical mile territorial sea surrounding the Senkaku Islands. Their entry point lay east of Minamikojima and Uotsuri Island, 2 rocky outcrops that have become familiar markers in the long-running dispute. For nearly 2 hours, the Chinese formation maneuvered inside these contested waters, their presence tracked by radar and by visual confirmation from Japanese patrol craft. Each hull maintained a steady course, at times slowing near Minamikojima before shifting position closer to Uotsuri Island. The vessels held formation, neither veering toward the islands nor making abrupt moves, and never straying beyond the invisible boundary that separates international waters from Japanese claimed territory. Japan Coast Guard logs recorded the movement minute by minute, noting each heading and speed change. At approximately 12:20 p.m., the Chinese ships altered course, turned south, and exited the territorial sea in a deliberate procession. The entire operation, the entry, patrol, and withdrawal, unfolded within a tightly defined window, leaving a clear sequence of timestamps and geolocated positions. The territorial sea boundary, enforced by international law but contested in practice, stood as the only fixed line in an otherwise fluid confrontation. Japan Coast Guard crews moved quickly to reinforce their patrol line, dispatching additional vessels to form a barrier between the Chinese formation and the islands. Officers on the bridge monitored radar and visual feeds, tracking every heading change. As the Chinese ships slowed near Minamikojima, Japanese patrols advanced to within half a nautical mile, holding position in the rolling sea. The rules were clear: no physical contact, no escalation, but no retreat. Radio operators broadcast warnings over VHF, repeating the phrase, "You are violating Japanese territorial waters. Leave immediately." Electronic message boards flashed the same demand in Mandarin and Japanese, visible from the decks of the Chinese vessels. Each message was logged by timestamp, audio recorders capturing both the warnings and the silence that followed. The tension was not limited to the water. Local fishing boats from Ishigaki and Yonaguni, already wary of the standoff, withdrew from the area on Coast Guard advice. For Japan Coast Guard officers, every maneuver demanded focus, adhering to engagement protocols under high stress, knowing that a single misstep could escalate the situation. Throughout the 2-hour incursion, crews documented every exchange, compiling evidence for later review. The restraint shown on both sides kept the confrontation from boiling over, but inside the patrol rooms, the strain was evident in tightened voices and clipped radio calls. The standoff became a test not just of sovereignty, but of discipline and judgment under pressure. On November 7, 2025, Prime Minister Sanae Takaichi faced a packed diet session and delivered a phrase that would ripple far beyond the chamber. She said a Chinese attack on Taiwan could constitute a survival-threatening situation for Japan. The wording was precise, echoing the legal standard embedded in Japan's 2015 security legislation. Under those laws, a survival-threatening situation is defined as an event where an attack on a close ally, such as the United States or Taiwan, poses a clear danger to Japan's own survival and the fundamental rights of its people. The cabinet alone holds the authority to make this determination after reviewing intelligence and consulting with the National Security Council. If the cabinet finds that no other means exist to protect the nation, it can authorize the use of force, but only to the minimum necessary extent allowed by the Constitution. Parliamentary approval is required unless the threat is so urgent that immediate action is justified. Takaichi's statement broke with the tradition of ambiguity, drawing a direct line between a Taiwan contingency and Japan's legal right to collective self-defense. Her remarks established a clear threshold. If China's actions are judged to meet this standard, Japan's government has both the legal framework and the procedural mechanism to respond with force, not just words. Within hours of the Senkaku incursion, diplomatic channels in both capitals lit up. In Beijing, Japan's ambassador was summoned to the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, where Chinese officials demanded an immediate retraction of Prime Minister Takaichi's remarks about Taiwan. At the same time, China's Consul General in Osaka, Shui Jian, posted a statement on X that drew swift international attention. The message, interpreted by Tokyo as a direct threat against the Prime Minister, said, "We have no choice but cut off that dirty neck that has been Japan lunged at us without hesitation. The post was deleted soon after, but not before journalists archived the text and included it in news coverage. Beijing's response extended beyond social media. The Ministry of Education issued a travel warning, advising Chinese citizens to avoid non-essential trips to Japan, citing safety concerns. These moves were met with equal force in Tokyo. Japan's foreign ministry lodged a formal protest, summoned the Chinese ambassador, and condemned both the territorial incursion and the consul general's message as extremely inappropriate. The chief cabinet secretary reiterated that Japan would not tolerate threats to its leaders or violations of its sovereignty. Amid the exchange of protests and warnings, Tokyo dispatched a senior foreign ministry official to Beijing, seeking to prevent further escalation. Each statement, advisory, and deleted post added new fuel to the standoff, turning a maritime encounter into a full-scale diplomatic confrontation. The words traded in press releases and social feeds quickly became as consequential as the maneuvers at sea, with officials on both sides weighing every phrase for its potential to raise or lower the temperature. Independent analysts began their review within hours of the November 16th incursion, drawing on a combination of government releases, commercial satellite images, and open-source vessel registries. 4 distinct hull signatures appeared in the available satellite passes, each matching the profile and dimensions of Chinese Coast Guard cutters previously cataloged in the region. The lead vessel, identified as CCG-1307 in prior months, was recognized by its unique superstructure and hull markings. Analysts overlaid these satellite frames with the Automatic Identification System, or AIS data, confirming the convergence and southbound departure of all 4 ships along a track consistent with Japan Coast Guard logs. While AIS signals from the vessels were intermittent, likely due to intentional blackouts, visual confirmation filled the gaps, showing the formation arcing inside the 12 nautical mile limit before turning away. Weapons identification added another layer of certainty. High-resolution imagery from Planet Labs and at least one still photograph taken by a local mariner captured the outline of deck-mounted autocannons on 2 of the vessels. Naval ordnance experts comparing these images to registry data identified the mounts as HPJ 13 30mm automatic cannons, a configuration not routinely seen in earlier patrols. Partial video logs from the Japan Coast Guard, though not released in full, corroborated the presence of these weapons and the sequence of maneuvers. Each source, satellite, AIS, photographic, and official log aligned on the key points. 4 Chinese hulls, 2 visibly armed, inside Japanese claimed waters for nearly 2 hours. The evidence base, though not exhaustive, left little doubt about the facts on the water. 25 Chinese Coast Guard intrusions into the Senkaku territorial waters have been recorded since January, an average of about twice per month. Some experts argue the November 16, 2025 incident fits this established pattern, a routine demonstration of presence rather than a calculated response. Others point to the timing and armament, noting that the incursion followed Prime Minister Sanae Takaichi's explicit security warning by just 9 days. The addition of visible machine guns on deck, rarely seen in earlier patrols, adds weight to the argument for deliberate signaling. A third view cautions against drawing hard conclusions, reminding listeners that similar patrols occurred in October and that overlapping military exercises often coincide with these maritime moves. The risk, many analysts warn, lies in normalization. As these armed standoffs become more frequent, the line between routine and escalation blurs. Each encounter tests the credibility of Japan's alliance commitments and the effectiveness of its legal reforms. A senior fellow at the Japan Institute of International Affairs summarizes the dilemma. The facts support heightened risk of coercive signaling after strategic statements, but ongoing gray zone operations indicate an underlying pattern independent of single events. Policy recommendations now dominate official briefings. Experts urge Japan to enhance Coast Guard capabilities, expand real-time intelligence sharing with USA and regional partners, and establish reliable crisis communication channels with Beijing. These steps, they argue, are essential to prevent future encounters from spiraling beyond control. In the East China Sea, each maneuver redraws the map of risk. With Japan's security laws now explicit and China's moves unblinking, the margin for error shrinks. What happens next won't just test diplomacy, it will define the region's balance of power. The world is watching.